The answer, obviously, a yes. We would support that. We do support that. Why should we support it? Well, you know, my view of what our town is the open space, is the national forest. It is not a place, not Disneyland. You don't come here, you know, to just simply eat and drink and go on rides, and even though we have some of that. But the backcountry is a big attraction for a lot of people, so it's both helpful to the economy, but it's also something that protects the very the elements of our environment that support life, and so, you know, including us two-legged ones. I wasn't sure Randy was, which, what did you refer to, the lunatic in office? He didn't say which office, so I'm hoping that I don't take that personally, although it always makes me nervous. So anyway, the answer is yes.
Thank you, Mr. Johnston. The next question is also submitted by the Sierra Club, and it also it relates to the Los Padres National Forest. The United States Forest Service is consolidating its offices and services and proposing that the Los Padres National Forest Service's Ojai Ranger Station, which is on East Ojai Avenue here in the valley, be moved and consolidated with the Santa Barbara Ranger District, and the new office would be easily convenient to Ojai in the San Ynez Valley. Our office here on East Ojai Avenue is close, but the issue is not quite a done deal. Discussions are being held with the supervisor's office of the Los Padres National Forest. But Congress has directed that the Forest Service consolidate offices throughout North America. What would you be willing to do by this December to get the Forest Service to leave its office in downtown Ojai, which serves local forest users and visitors and provides critical fire protection in the forest around Ojai? Mr. Blatz, would you start us off?
Well, what would I be willing to do? Well, I'm not going to chain myself to the building. I know it's a tradition around here, but I wouldn't take it that far. The reality is anything we can do. I mean, obviously, that's not a city council decision. That's something that we can have input on, just as the citizens can have input on it. And if this is an issue that everybody agrees on, then the key thing is to get your voice heard, get active, and I think the city can play a role in trying to coordinate that for the citizens. Some of these issues aren't, you know, just the council. We're all in this city together. And this is one of those kinds of issues where we don't have a lot of authority over it. The opinion of the city matters, but the opinion of a lot of citizens who all agree saying the same thing at the same time is really key. So I would be more than willing to support an organized campaign to help address this issue and make sure that we have the absolute best, you know, Forest Service office that we can that can help everybody locally.
Thank you, Mr. Blatz. Mr. Wyrick?
Adding to what Mr. Blatz just said, what are they trying to do? Do they really think it's almost a safety issue? They really think people are going to go and drive and get the permits they need, as opposed to just kind of, you know, not do the right thing in terms of regulating our national forest? I think we can try to make the arguments along the lines of this is just, you know, not a way to provide good stewardship, as well as trying to communicate with them. Is there anything, you know, that is a problem with the environment that you're in our city that we could help with? At least ask them, increase public awareness, like Mr. Blatz said, and just try to find out, you know, what's driving this, and find a way to find the leverage points to try to change it.
Thank you, Mr. Wyrick. Mr. Haney?
So again, it sounds like another one of these budget cuts by the nut that's in office. I have no, you know, I'm just lost on why we. Pardon me. Well, it's not the mayor, if that's what anyone is implying. In fact, I want to talk to that, because I'm glad Johnny said something about that.
Let's not get off the question.
You know, no, seriously, 2 years ago when Johnny was elected, and Johnny and I have talked about this in depth, we didn't know each other. No one on the council knew Johnny, at least I didn't know him, and it took us a year to actually figure out what our roles were and how we could complement each other and how we could work together. And one of the things that I kept saying, and I know Johnny says it now, is we started looking at the similarities and stopped looking at the differences. So right now, I think this council is functioning at a high level. I think we're all working together to solve community problems. So I would never say anything like that about Mayor Johnson, or if it's Mayor Savaro or anyone else in the future. But again, I think it's an underutilized resource, having the forest department in our backyard. I haven't been to a forest day. I haven't been to anything in this community where we actually involve ourselves with what they're doing in the protection and in the facilitating of our national forests. So obviously I'd be adamantly opposed to them leaving us, and I would do everything I could to help them stay.
Thank you, Mr. Haney. Mr. Lara?
I would agree with the three gentlemen that just spoke about trying to do anything possible about having them stay here in office. I do want to say that Randy brings up a really good point about finding the interests, finding what are the common issues instead of finding the differences. And that's what I enjoyed working with the council when I was on council, was approaching it in a positive direction, bringing tough issues to the table and figuring out ways where we could collaborate and thinking outside the box. This is something we did extremely well in terms of many areas, working with CFROG on the petroleum appeal that we had. We worked with other organizations to team up about how to do water security. This is an issue that I think I'd bring a lot of value in office, trying to work with a lot of, not just my colleagues, but with different organizations. And I keep doing it now on different boards that I sit on.
Thank you, Mr. Lara. Mr. Johnson?
Well, I am in favor of keeping it here, and I'm not sure how we'd go about doing that, particularly this morning's paper talking again with the president wanting to cut the budgets of everything, and one of the reasons the Forestry Service is closing because they have such an inadequate budget to keep it going. It's been a wonderful resource locally, and we've been blessed with it, and I always look to the blogs or the notes that I get from the person that in the Sierra Club that I look most to, who is our moderator, for ideas and guidance. If you were to think that, or if you would think that it would help to go back to DC and lobby, I would certainly be willing to do that and to participate in whatever kind of plan somebody can come up with to draw attention to the importance of keeping it here, because not only is it a convenience to us, it is also jobs and people who live here. We've all become fairly close over the years with the rangers and the people who have worked out of that office. So, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Our next question, which was a two-part question submitted by both CFROG and the Sierra Club, dealing with water. What an issue. You'll have 2 minutes, because this is a rather lengthy question, 2 minutes to answer, gentlemen. What is your position on using state water project water to relieve pressure on Lake Casitas? Do you feel bringing state water into Ventura County would be growth-inducing for the Ojai Valley? Do you support connecting to the state water project? Should that water ever be made available to local oil operators, and if so, should those operators be asked to contribute to the cost of the project? Mr. Blatz, would you start us off? Oh, I did? Souza, what are you reading from? Well, let me read the whole question over then. I missed that. What is your position on using state water project water to relieve pressure on Lake Casitas? Do you feel bringing state water into Ventura County would be growth-inducing for the Ojai Valley? Do you support connecting to the state water project? Should that water ever be made available? Well, apparently I have a different version here. Okay.
Can you imagine what it's like for those of us who are going to try to answer that?
Okay. Sure. Pass this down.
Jim.
What am I? What? Oh, you tricked me there. Oh, good trick. Well, no, a lot more questions. Where in the hell am I missing?
I can just tell you, but come away from the microphone a second. It's a part of the question that I think didn't happen after. add it. So just add the state water project and other expensive infrastructure projects to increase water supply.
Does anyone know the Jeopardy song?
Okay. We rarely make mistakes, but we made one. So, I'm going to read it again and try to remember what you said. What is your position on using state water project water to relieve pressure on Lake Casitas? Do you feel bringing state water into Ventura County would be growth-inducing for the Ojai Valley? If you support connecting to the state water project and other expensive projects that increase water supply, was not in my original questions, should that water be made available to local oil operators? And if so, should those operators be asked to contribute to the cost of the project? Did I get it? Okay, Mr. Blatz, would you start it off?
All right. All right. Well, first of all, I am in favor of potentially connecting to state water because there is a desperate need that we have that you can all go to another candidate forum and debate whether or not Casitas has moved quickly enough on that particular issue or not. But as somebody who has spent 8 years wrangling control of our underground water back to us and understanding how the dynamics between the lake and that water underground work, my biggest concern is that the gift that we have in Ojai of underground water, as the climate gets worse and the drought worsens, there will be a lot of pressure, and it won't be from Casitas itself, but from the city of Ventura or other water users to get access and do something stupid with our underground water. And I am committed to defending our underground basin. I will lay down on the train tracks before the train comes to make sure that it is protected. We just paid for getting it back out of Golden State Water's hands. And my number one concern is that wonder that is our underground water that has kept this valley alive for a very long time and is a core reason why the lake isn't empty right now. In fact, everybody who's a well owner is getting sued by Ventura right now. Ventura is essentially saying, we don't want you using as much of your own water anymore. But if we weren't using our underground water, the lake would be dry because they used it all. So I don't love the idea of state water. I wish this was not a time where we had, kind of a proverbial gun to our head to have to make that decision. But the reality is that we've got to find an alternative, consistent, viable water source, and it's not simple to do. The other plans that have been proposed are not consistent with being a viable and consistent water source to my acceptance, like drilling another well and behind Casitas and other things. I think those are good parts of a plan, but ultimately the state water part, whether that's connection for us directly or it's a connection for Ventura that indirectly helps us, we can debate about that another time, but principally, yes, unfortunately, and I say it reluctantly, it's time that we support state water in Ojai.
Thank you, Mr. Blatz. Mr. Wyrick?
2 minutes. Number one, this community did run out of water in the 50s. Read the old newspapers. We were trucking water into Ojai. Their groundwater wasn't sufficient. The lake was designed to be back up to the groundwater, and right after the State Water Project was engaged in the 60s, we all started paying for the right to use state water as backup to the lake, which is back up to our groundwater. That is the situation, and we're still doing that. We're still paying for that right for that backup. The way to control growth is with general plans and land use regulations. I look at being able to have the backup from state water as originally envisioned in the 60s as a desiccation avoidance as opposed to growth inducing. I want to have irrigated citrus groves that are fire breaks. They need to be irrigated. They need to have water. I want to have an economic base that we are enjoying right now. If we don't, given what climate change is showing in terms of the changes in precipitation events, if we don't advance our storage and ability to move between storage, we're going to be facing what part of our what we've come to love about Ojai do we want to do without. And on top of that, if we're going to meet habitat restoration requirements that are coming in terms of in-stream flow requirements, we've got to have more reliable backup. We've got to take advantage of what we've been paying for years.
Thank you, Mr. Wyrick. Mr. Haney?
So again, this comes back to thinking about community versus about just our specific needs. We have paid to date close to $70 million for state water, yet we haven't received a drop of it. That's the first thing to understand. The second thing to understand is we don't need state water to come to Lake Casitas. What we need is we need a state water tie-in that'll take water to West Ventura. If we can take West Ventura off of using Lake Casitas water, and they're allocated 10,000 acre feet a year, then that in turn will help us to enhance the lake storage capacities. So that's the state water that I'm looking at. Bringing it to West Ventura, taking them off of the Casitas nipple, whatever we want to call it, and leaving that water in the lake for future storage and future use in the event of the situation that we're in right now. The other thing is, when you look at alternative water sources, we need to have something other than God. It's that simple, because right now that's what we have. We're relying on God to replenish our aquifer and relying on Mother Nature to replenish our lake. So any opportunity that we have to enhance storage, we should be looking at it. Whether it's state water, whether it's desalinization, whether like we're doing as a city, stormwater catchment and enhancement, whether it's looking at how we can lessen the taking of water through the Ventura watershed. These are all the things that we need to look at. And we need to be looking at them, again, as a community, not just as a special interest of Ojai. And I'm telling you, right now, we are lacking that. We are lacking that from the county supervisor level all the way through all the other cities. We're lacking that. And I don't have enough time to tell you about the grand jury report that actually talked about water in the Ventura County community. But it was horrible. And they seriously said, you as a county need to work together because your water issues are severe. Not Ojai, the county.
Thank you, Mr. Haney. Mr. Lara? Mr. Haney.